please.
You may begin.
As a person supporting the affirmative side, I believe that globalization is harmful to human rights. I'd like to start this debate with defining the terms of my position statement. Globalization, as defined by the Oxford Dictionary, is the process by which businesses and other organizations develop international influence or start operating on an international scale. The meaning of harmful is causing or capable of causing harm, or injurious. Human rights are the rights believed to belong to every person. For the sake of this debate, I would also like to define process. Process is the sequence of interdependent and linked procedures which, at every stage, consume one or more resources, such as workers, machinery, so on, to convert inputs into outputs. Globalization is harmful to human rights because of three reasons: the basis of globalization, the harm it puts on human rights, and the actual use of the word harm in this situation. First of these would be the simple point of globalization. Globalization is a process by which businesses develop international influence. Modern globalization, since that is what we are talking about, is an economically driven process, meaning that it is driven by the desire to profit from corporations with devoid of basic human rights, that is, of the laborers. In a world where consumerism is present, we often buy things based on the brand name rather than the product ethics. Values, for example. According to Tasmin B. Kazi, Nike is the largest example of such globalization. Their mindset is that there is no point to spend money on that machines that will rust, factories that need constant upkeep, and employees that will age and die. Resources should be used on sponsorships, packaging, expansion, advertising, as this is what will help to build superstars. Thus, the way to globalize in the common area is to spend as little as possible on the product and spend more on marketing and the branding. This means that there is complete disregard to the right of the workforce who produce for multinational companies. In a world where globalization is present continuously, it is important to remember the ethical side of things. Human rights are the rights believed to belong to every person, and if there is harm to even the smallest...
Hello, my name is William, and I'm going to be representing the negative side of this argument. So, firstly, globalization is not harmful to human rights because it supports the human right of food and shelter, or the right to have sufficient food and a reliable shelter. Secondly, globalization is not harmful to human rights because it opens up job opportunities. And thirdly, globalization is not harmful to human rights because it allows multinational corporations to industrialize countries. So first, globalization is not harmful to human rights because it supports the human right of food and shelter. This is because living standards in third world countries have skyrocketed due to globalization and the increase in profit. Instead of people living on the streets, people are moving into houses. Because of globalization and the profits Botswana has made, the average Botswana today lives in the standard of living as the average Italian in the 1950s. In the 1950s, most of the Botswana people were very poor. Most lived on the streets or had very poor houses. But the Italian in the 1950s had bigger houses and a cleaner area. And the increase in the Botswana's living standards is caused by globalization, and it's a really good increase. Secondly, globalization is not harmful to human rights because it opens up job opportunities. When multinational corporations set base in a country and open up factories, more people are getting jobs with sufficient income to support their families, and this helps support the workers' right. The right that every grown-up has the right to work and a reliable and good income. According to the Business Insider, Foxconn in China has employed over 1 million workers for Apple. That's 1 million people that now have a job and can support their families instead of working in agriculture. Because in agriculture, like most people do in third world countries, if there's a bad yield, then you will get no income. If you get no income, you can't sustain your families.
As said before, when a corporation is globalizing, they put profit-making over product-making, which includes the labor force that takes part in the process. I would like to give you a clear example of how human rights of workers are broken. First of all, the TNCs, which are transnational corporations, subcontract their production to third world country contractors, which is what William stated. However, the job opportunities that are provided for the workers are insufficient to be viable as human rights. The recent collapse of the Rana Plaza factory in Bangladesh, where several MNCs were producing their products, would be the easiest way to show that globalization has harmed human rights. As a result of globalization, several corporations made deals with the subcontractors to produce their products in the cheap labor opportunities I described previously. The subcontractor forced their workers in the factory and warned them that if they did not return to work, there would be no money to pay them for the month of April, which means that there would be no food for them and their children. This is a complete violation of Social Security, Article 23 of the United Declaration of Human Rights, since they are being forced to work in unsafe conditions, as well as Article 24, which is that everybody has the right to rest, since the workers are not provided adequate rest hours. And finally, they are violating the right to a standard life of adequate of health and well-being for his or her family, since the workers are being forced to work, and if they are not to work, then they will not be able to obtain this standard of life. This means globalization has led to a harmful environment and it has been harmful to human rights. Finally, I would like to state that something can bring benefit and can be harmful at the same time. The resolution of this argument is that globalization is harmful to human rights. It is not that globalization only brings harm to human rights. It is simply stating that globalization is harmful. I am not denying that globalization is bringing some benefit to human rights. I am simply stating that globalization is bringing harm also. There are always two sides to one story. Here the evidence clearly shows that one side of the process, the corporations, are bringing harm to the other side, the labor force.
To restate my previous points, I talked about globalization not being harmful to human rights because it supports the human right of food and shelter, the right to having sufficient food and reliable shelter, and that globalization is not harmful to human rights because it opens up job opportunities. Thirdly, globalization is not harmful to human rights because it will allow multinational corporations to industrialize companies. Because it helps in creating better possibilities for education where there are none, and helping to enforce the human right of education. The United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, or UNESCO, in the sub-Sahara desert among girls and in war-torn areas, more than 33 million children were added to school rolls between 2000 and 2008. This is because, due to globalization, organizations like these can come in to countries where there are problems and help out. That's 33 million children that now have an education and a possibility to have and live a good life. Now, my opponent said that this is a two-sided argument, and I agree. She also talked about it bringing harm as well, and the harm being worse. However, the harm does make up for some of the pros, but not all of them. Because if an education is given, that can be the whole change. That can be a bigger change than just having a job. Because if you have an education, then you can go to school. Then you have the possibility for an even better job in future outside of your country. Thank you.
You'll have 2 minutes to prepare. You have 1 minute remaining. into rebuttal and closing. We will start with the opposition. We'll have 1 minute for rebuttal, and then we'll go back and forth.
This is the one.
Ready? Go.
My opponent touched on a point about organizations, in a way, taking advantage of workers and not paying them as much money. However, this little pay that they may receive, or this little pay that they may receive, is usually more than they did before they joined that workforce. For example, no, because usually these workers come from villages where agriculture is their source of income. And if the yield is bad, as I stated before, they will receive no income at all. So even though they may be threatened to not receive income for that month, a bad yield could mean bad income for an entire year. So looking at the long run, the factories are actually helping them in a way with income. Therefore, the minimum wage or the little pay that they receive is still better than what they could do from the yields. Also, most developing countries that have people working in factories do get time to rest. My opponent...
I would like to refute William's point that the ends justify the means. I would like to say that in this case, the ends cannot justify the means. The only plausible argument here is that the benefit of globalization outweighs the harm that globalization is brings on human rights. Thus, the ends justify the means. However, this argument is still addressing that globalization does break human rights, and no amount of justification can deny that. William is arguing that the ends justify the means in this case. Thus, he is stating that in a way, globalization is bringing harm. This is addressing that, well, my side of the argument. Thus, as seen through the evidence I have provided, globalization is harmful to human rights.
Closing arguments?
Before I restate my points, I would just like to point out one thing in my opponent's argument. When she stated the human rights, she stated the U.S. human rights, and not the global ones. That is a big difference, and it can be, but they're not always the exact same. So to restate my arguments, my first argument was that the globalization is not harmful to human rights because it supports the human right of food and shelter, the right to have sufficient food and reliable shelter. Second, globalization is not harmful to human rights because it opens up job opportunities. And third, globalization is not harmful to human rights because it allows multinational corporations to industrialize countries. Thank you so much for listening to my argument, and thank you.
First of all, I would like to state that your argument is invalid since I stated the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is the worldwide Declaration of Human Rights. Thus, your argument is invalid. And just to restate my points, I would like to say that globalization is harmful to human rights since it's based on profit with disregard to human rights. And if a corporation has the choice to choose harmful globalization, then globalization is harmful since it can and is causing harm to the human rights of the modern world. This harm cannot be justified since justifying the harm is backing up the point that there is being harm brought to human rights. Thus, globalization is harmful to human rights.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
I'm sure you said U.S. and not
No,
universal.
I said United Declaration of Human Rights.
I thought for sure you said U.S., not United.
I'm going to go check for Mr. Curry really quickly. See where he is.
Should I turn it off?
What? What?